views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronx Net or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Net's program where we talk to writers and journalists and editors and photographers, filmmakers, really anybody that's putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. And this evening we have a very interesting program. We're going to talk to a reporter intern from Gotham Gazette. We're going to roll up our sleeves and get into some very in-depth discussion about Bronx politics. Then our second guest is going to be someone you're really going to enjoy meeting, someone who is a filmmaker, has put together an unbelievable film and is up for a very prestigious award for that film. So that's what we've got tonight. So let's get started and let me introduce Andrew Millman, the aforementioned reporter intern from the Gotham Gazette. Andrew, nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's just do a little background. I mean, people say, wait a minute, an intern, and I will tell you that he's written some really hard-hitting, straightforward, in-depth articles about Bronx politics. A little background about you. You're still in school. Give us the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm a senior at Fordham University, which is here in the Bronx. I live in the Bronx, and this summer I've gotten to really go in-depth on a lot of the big things that are happening in the Bronx politics, which is one of the kind of fastest changing political environments in the country. And it's one of the most democratic. So what happens in Democratic County politics really matters in this borough.
I think it's worthwhile noting, you said you grew up in the Bronx? You live in the Bronx?
No, I just live in the Bronx right now. I didn't grow
okay.
up.
And where did you grow up, just for fun?
Pennsylvania.
What? Well, you know, that leads me to, I always want to ask this question. So coming in from Pennsylvania and studying at Fordham University, what are your impressions twofold? One, about the Bronx, and number two, about what it's been like to cover the Bronx and cover Bronx politics?
Well, first, the Bronx, I really enjoy living here. It's really a great experience. I love the diversity and just everything about the Bronx. In June, during the primaries, when I would be walking around, I'd see posters for political candidates here in the borough alongside posters for candidates in the Dominican presidential election, because there's such a Dominican diaspora here. And just that level of diversity, the immigrant culture, you can always find good food here. It's just a great place to live and work.
And, you know, you tapped into something that's, I always say, and obviously I've been working and covering the Bronx for a very long time. I feel like a lot of times I could walk down any block in the Bronx and write a story about that there are living and breathing stories everywhere. And it's for a journalist, and I appreciate that you've recognized it, there's no limit. You could turn anywhere and come up with a good story. I realize you're writing about politics, but yeah, right? I mean, it's like that, right?
Yeah, it's just like I walk down one street and I'll see signs for a presidential election in another country. I'll walk down another and I'll see a bunch of new residential developments being built. So there's just like, literally, like you said, you can find something on every block to cover.
Is politics your thing? I mean, is that it? Or, you know, you'll do whatever they told you to write about?
I mean, I'll do whatever in this economy. But yeah, politics is my thing. I enjoy writing about it. I think just the dynamics, especially what's going on right now, both in the Bronx, citywide, and also nationally, it's just one of those really interesting times to cover politics.
So let's talk about it. You characterized the Bronx as one of the, certainly we know it's a Democratic borough because we haven't had a Republican leader, elected leader for a very long time. But you said things are changing. I heartily agree, as a matter of fact. What's the change and like, what have you seen that would foretell a bit of the future?
Well, I think you can really trace it back to starting with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beating Joe Crowley in 2018 in the primary. And that was kind of just set off a domino wave of other stuff happening You also had Jeff Klein, who led the IDC, losing a few months later in a primary to Alessandro Biaggi. And then this year, you have not only Ruben Diaz Sr. losing in his congressional primary and then saying he's going to retire, but you also have earlier in this year, Ruben Diaz Jr. saying he wouldn't run for mayor after it was widely speculated for many years that he would be running for that office. And then you also had an ally of both Ruben Diaz's, Marcos Crespo, quitting abruptly both the assembly and the county party chairmanship.
Mm-hmm. So things are certainly changing. The one you didn't mention was Elliot Engel was defeated.
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course, absolutely true. I really have talked about it, and you talked about it as being one of the most democratic, counties in the nation. I think it's going to be one of the most progressive counties in the nation, potentially. I mean, we don't want to, assume anything, but assuming the Democrats move forward, which history will tell you they will, with Ritchie Torres, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamal Bowman, and Adriano Espaillat, who's also an incumbent. That would make it about as, you can't even imagine a more progressive or forward-thinking group, right?
Yeah, and Ritchie Torres is fairly progressive, I think, when you look at nationally, but there are a lot of Bronx progressives who would quibble with that label for him. But just to give you an anecdote, in 2016, the average age of the 4 congressmen representing the Bronx was 73. In 2021, it's going to be 43.
Wow.
Huge.
And we're not going to talk about it as much this evening, but across the board, I mean, we've got overhauls in state politics, assembly members. I mean, you mentioned Marcos Crespo is not going to be there. I mean, Michael Blake will not be there. And if things go to form, you will have many progressive people. I think I will tell you that I think it's an indication of where the Bronx is really at. I think that there's young people who are saying, old guard, no, and this is what we're going to do. You have written rather extensively and in depth about some of the. Now we're going to be turning our attention to the council races. Let's talk about the replacement for Ritchie Torres. This should be a very interesting group of people who are going to be running, isn't it?
Yeah, there's kind of this wide variety of people. You have 2 directors of community boards, John Sanchez and Aisha Bravo, who are going to be running. You have Julian Sepulveda, who's the son of State Senator Luis Sepulveda, as well as he works in city government right now. And then you have a district leader, Oswald Feliz. And then you also have an education liaison in the Bronx Borough President's Office, Elisa Crespo. And they're all just a lot of people who are definitely steeped in experience, but they all kind of bring different things to the table. So it's definitely going to be an interesting race, especially when you look at the implementation of ranked choice voting. Because there are so many candidates, it really will depend on who is able to appeal to the broadest swath of the district to who eventually becomes the council member.
I think in other years, if you had not an open seat, as in this case, if you had, one candidate, if you had, for example, a John Sanchez or Aisha Bravo, who you mentioned, and you had them as the one candidate or 1 or 2 candidates, there would be a lot of assumptions about them. But when, you mentioned those 2 very popular district managers, Louis Sepulveda's son is certainly worthy of some attention. He has a legitimate public service career, and the others that you mentioned, it becomes very difficult, much like it was in the congressional race to replace Jose Serrano. Very difficult to kind of horse race it. Do you have a sense yet, or there's no way to really tell who's going to emerge out of this, right? This is pretty competitive.
Yeah, I would not gamble on this race, honestly.
Don't gamble on politics anyway. It's not good.
I mean, I agree. But just between, it's going to be, because it's a special election, it's going to be the city's first implementation of ranked choice voting. We don't know how voters are going to respond to the system, how many of them are going to actually understand what's happening. That's been a big issue that a lot of the mayoral candidates have talked about. in the past year or so is educating voters on this. We don't know how successful those efforts from the Board of Election will be. And then you also just have so many different candidates running, and I could just see so many of them really becoming huge figures in the future of Bronx politics and just city politics and the national politics. They all a lot of them have very compelling stories, and any one of them could catch fire, I think, and become this huge person.
And, you know, so I will tell you, just from also, you know, sitting back and watching so many of these races, if you try to determine who's going to win, well, raising money is going to become a big thing. And the other thing is how it really is going to matter, especially with that kind of competition, how you maneuver your support. Whether it's through social media or other grassroots things. And of course, now there's a challenge. Much of it has to be done virtually. You can't stand at a subway station and, you know, hand out things and shake hands like you used to be able to do. Maybe one day we'll get back to that, who knows? So I think it's a bit of a challenge. You mentioned the son of Senator Sepulveda, the son of Assemblyman Dinowitz is running in a different part of the Bronx. Why don't you talk for a moment about that?
Yeah, Eric Dinowitz, who's the son of Assembly Member Jeff Dinowitz, and Eric Dinowitz is also a district leader in the same assembly district. So he has some electoral experience. He's running in that district to replace Andrew Cohen on the council, who just recently was nominated for a Supreme Court judgeship in Bronx County. So he'll be leaving likely at the beginning of the next year. So that will be also a special election around this time in late February, early March. And he's running against Jessica Haller, who's kind of a tech entrepreneur and environmental activist, as well as Dan Paternak, who used to chair the Community Board 8. And then also Marco Sierra is just jumped in. He's another district leader. And then also Abigail Martin, who's a social worker, who also recently jumped in.
And again, in another year, you'd say, well, the name recognition for Eric Dinowitz would play, and his father certainly has enough political support, knows how to run a campaign. I mean, we get that. But, you know, Dan Paternak has a base of people. He's run for office before, although he did drop out at that point, actually in the name of a larger issue for Democrats. But then there's a whole movement toward having women be elected. And for many people, they're saying, well, wait a minute, this is now an opportunity to have women be elected. Certainly Jessica Haller is quite a viable candidate. I mean, I've talked to her a number of times, and in a way, she's no different from the others, forward thinking, you know, all those kinds of things. Are there issues that you think will play here? To me, it's not an issue race because they all agree on the same stuff, right?
Yeah, I really found a lot of similar themes in talking. I talked to all of them except Marco Sierra, and they all kind of had the same, not stances. Obviously, Haller stressed very heavily environmental issues, and I think it's going to come down to who can sell themselves as being the most effective council member. Fundraising isn't everything, but Dinowitz has raised over $70,000. Haller raised over 50,000, and then Paternak raised 30,000. So that gives you a sense of where each are drawing support. Dinowitz is going to have support from the U of T. He's a public school teacher in special education. And I know Haller is also, I believe, backed by 21 and 21, that effort you mentioned for women to be elected into office. So we'll really see what happens. I think there's still a lot of time for each of them to kind of define themselves in the eyes of their potential constituents.
In order to run a proper election, we need people to do proper reporting on that election. And for that, I'm very grateful that Andrew Millman is, they call him a reporter intern, but I'm treating him like he's one of my colleagues at this point. And so, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to keep, listen, everybody, check out Gotham Gazette, gothamgazette.com, and read Andrew's work, and just Google his name, and you'll really get a lot of insight as to what's going on in Bronx politics. Andrew, we're going to look forward to reading more of your work and then inviting you back here to the Bronx Buzz.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you again soon. Folks, let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about that, talk to and about that filmmaker I talked about. We're going to show you a clip from the film, It's Unbelievable. Don't go away.
We built a media network for you.
Bronx Net TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at bronxnet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I mentioned at the top of the show that I was excited about this filmmaker and the film that he put together. The film was called Rest of Us, and it is an extraordinary film that cuts to the core of life in the Bronx. And it is, I'm proud, and I'm sure the guest is proud to say, it is a finalist in the 2020 Hip Hop Film Festival. Let's see, he's the producer, he's the director, and he's the writer. It is my pleasure to bring along a Bronxite, Jaylin Pressly. Jalen Presley, congratulations on I think it's an
Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's talk about how a young man from the Bronx gets into filmmaking and getting to a point where you can put out something really as excellent as that.
My passion for film was always, as a little kid, I always went to movies often, as with my grandfather, with my mother, with my dad. We often went to the Magic Johnson Theater in Harlem or the White Stone movie theater, which is no longer here. But, I grew up going to movie theaters a lot, so I was always fascinated by telling stories and things of that nature. So by the time I went to high school, kind of was a little undecided on what I wanted to study, like most high school seniors. And so I spent years or so, things of that nature. And the dream kind of started from there. I went to school to study film at Hunter College, and that's where it all started.
Certainly, if you're a Bronx person, we got to know where you went to high school.
I went to Kennedy. Well, I went to law and finance inside Kennedy. So I went to a law and finance, which is a vocational school, which is basically majors in law or finance studies, but I actually, as you can see, I went the other way when it came to being a filmmaker.
So you live in Throgs Neck and you traveled across the Bronx?
Yeah. My dream.
Hats off to you.
Yeah. My dream was to be a football star, but clearly that didn't work out. So God had other plans.
Well, if you value your knees, then you're better off being a filmmaker.
Right.
Anyway, let's talk about. And did you make other films up to this point, or is this, which would be incredible to me, that you that Rest of Us was one of your first?
No, Gary, this would be my second film. So when I was a senior at Hunter College, I did one little thesis project, which was an 8-minute film, which discussed about this teenage couple getting pregnant and what they decided to do in that short term. Then my next project after that was Strays, which basically touches on immigration and how it affects this young family, which was based off of a book by Diana Gurrell, who's an actress on the show Orange is the New Black. I read her autobiography and it really inspired me to do another short film. So I did that, and then I did Rest of Us last year. So this is my second project, you could say.
What really inspires me about Rest of Us is that, and I see a lot of stuff about the Bronx, and a lot of people from within the Bronx put out stuff about the Bronx, and outside the Bronx put stuff out about the Bronx.
Yes.
You captured what it is like for a young person to grow up in this borough with all the challenges and everything else. And I don't want to give the ending away. We're only going to show a tease. But I mean, it's just a tremendous job. Talk to me about your concept beforehand when you, said, oh, here's what I'm going to make.
Yeah, Gary. So I thought about this project about 2 years ago. So I always knew what I wanted the ending to be, what I wanted the beginning to be. But this film has so many layers to it, because I feel as a teenager growing up in New York City, there's a lot of pressure, especially when you grow up in the inner city where you don't have a true father figure in your life. You can get so easily distracted doing one thing, doing this, doing that, and that's what you kind of see throughout the film. Even though it's only a 13-minute film, I think I really tried to capture how hard it is to try and find your path and how easy it is to get distracted. And so my inspiration for this came from so many different things, whether it was listening to J. Cole, who I'm a big fan of his rap. He's a hip-hop artist. I'm a big fan of him. And also watching Rest of Us, This Is Us, the show on NBC, which is kind of where I wanted the show to go, where how a tragedy could affect so many people in such a short period of time. And if anybody has ever seen This Is Us, they know how losing Jack kind of broke that family apart. And that's kind of where I wanted this film also to go, where, you have these two friends who they kind of go to a cross path towards the end, and we had to go from there. And so my inspiration came from a lot of things, but more so I really want to tell a story that really captured what it is like to be a teenager in New York
One
City.
of the things that makes a good film writer, a filmmaker, excuse me, or a producer of anything, even television, is surrounding yourself with good people. If you look at the credits on that film, you have, people, like somebody who's handling casting and all that. Are these people you'd worked with before, or did you really go out and say, I really want to put a real movie together?
That's a great question, Gary. This being my second project, I'm kind of big on kind of working with the same people that we worked with before. I'm pretty sure you kind of work with the same people. You build a rapport with certain people, especially with your behind the scenes people. You kind of build a rapport with those people. And so my DP, which was Tom Mantos, who was simply amazing. I tell him what I want, and he kind of just reads my mind. He was my DP for my last project. He was my DP for this one. And then you also was fortunate enough to cast an amazing cast and crew. Everybody that you saw on that screen, I actually casted along with my assistant director Khalil, who's also from the Bronx. There was one weekend we put out an ad on Backstage.com, and we had people. We did auditions. We're trying to be real filmmakers, so we did auditions for about 4 or 5 hours. We had the talented. His name is Giuseppe and Francisco. They auditioned. They got the leading roles, and we went from there. And so, what a lot of people don't know about this film, where behind the scenes goes, is the story of this film was so different.
But I want to show the trailer first.
Yeah, of course, Gary.
So people will have a sense of what you're talking about. And what I will just look at the camera and say, don't ever underestimate the talent in the Bronx. These actors, so here we go. Rest of us, you're going to get a piece of it, and then afterwards we're going to find out how you might get to see the whole thing. But check it out. This is really right to the core of the borough of the Bronx. So here's the trailer.
He's still here?
No, and he's not coming back.
I can handle my own battles. Besides, my sister kicked him out.
Going forward, you need to worry about being the best person that you could be.
You know what scares me the most about going away for school? One day, he's just gonna snap, and I won't be here to protect you.
So there it is, just a taste of the rest of us. Jaylin, let's just talk about where can people see it? Can they see the whole thing? I mean, it's a limited thing. What is there a future for it? Or
yeah, so we just had the virtual screening with thanks to Hip Hop Film Festival. We had a great turnout. We had basically so many people supported the film, which was great. And so as of right now, we're in the works to get in distribution with Hughes Pictures, which is the independent company who does distribution for short films. So the goal is at some point in the near future to be on streaming platforms. That's what I envision. That's what Hughes Pictures envision, and hopefully we can eventually get to that point where it's able to be streamed from your TV or your TV or your phone.
And I will tell you, I'm going to volunteer this. The Bronx Buzz and Bronx Net, we will be happy to do whatever we can to support it. I mean, we believe in artists. Now, I cut you off and you were going to say some stuff about the actors. Again, I thought it was incredibly well acted. It was incredibly disciplined in the way it was presented. You wanted to talk some more about that?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't be anywhere without my cast and crew. That goes without any production that I've ever done. I always want to give 100% thanks to my cast and crew, but especially with this project because, about 72 to 96 hours before we went to production, I lost 2 actors just due to a conflict of schedule. And, I was truly thankful enough to not just pull the plug on a project to say, hey, I need to find 2 more actors. And that's when I found Anna Marie, and I also found Millie. So, and also Riley. So I found 3 actresses actually. And so I was truly blessed, they are not from the Bronx, but they're all from the tri-state area. And that's really kind of a testament to how much talent there is in this city. It's so easy to find talent. If you really want to do a project, you just got to be out there. You got to kind of sell yourself and have to sell your script and let your work speak for itself. And that's kind of what I did with this project.
This is a difficult question, maybe. I always assume that good artists and good creative people have the next project in mind.
Of course.
Have you learned any, of course, he says. Have you learned anything from this? And what
Yeah,
will
you
be
know,
the next
as a
project?
filmmaker, I kind of learned like in film school, you know, there's a huge gap between 1 and 2. Basically meaning like you learn a lot from your first project to your next project. You learn what didn't work, you learn what did work, you know? And I kind of try and take all of that into account when I'm working on my next project. And so, you know, my third project, which I hope to do maybe by next year, you know, this whole COVID thing put a lot of things on hold. But, you know, my goal is my next film will probably, most likely right now, I will 100% say touch on a lot of family topics. It's mainly touches on a father and daughter relationship, and it's going to go from there.
We in the Bronx, and I'm a Bronx boy also, we have a great desire to let people know what actually is going on here. And it seems to me that you are putting it out. Listen, we don't have any more time for you this evening, but tremendous work, Jalen Presley, and an emerging filmmaker, not only in the Bronx and New York City, but in America. And we're going to look for many more great things. And we hope you will make Bronx Net, the Bronx Buzz, your stop every time. Hey, I got something. Let me show you.
Gary, thanks so much for having me. You know, it's truly great to know what you guys are doing. You guys are creating a platform for independent artists like myself. And as you know, it's not easy being an independent filmmaker whatsoever. So, you know, I really try to take advantage of what you guys are doing, what other people are also doing for us filmmakers out there. It's
Listen,
great.
we love what you're doing. Thank you so much. And folks, maybe we'll put out when we get the idea of when people will be able to see that stream. Because Bronx people will love this film. It's about you and me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anyway, Jaylin, we'll see you around. Thanks to our new producer, Rebecca Hemick, who's doing a great job. And Sienna Jones is our new production intern. And guess what? We'll see you next week. This week, by the way, on Bronx Talk, we'll have the controller, Scott Stringer. So check that out. See ya. Good night.